up, buddy? Hey, YouTube. How y'all doing? I've made a video in a while. Just thought I'd sit and chat. I was thinking about making one of those channel trailers. Never have, but I don't know. I'm not gonna bother. You can just watch my videos and find out what I'm interested in, I guess, if you're interested. I got some books from the Goodwill the other day. Mysteries of the Ancient Americas. This one's cool because it's all pre-Columbus stuff. And it's extremely fascinating to me, especially because I think the one thing that fascinates me the most about our past, and one thing that you can tie it all together with, which I ramble about in all my videos, is like the Heliolithic aspect of it, and our use of psychedelics and stuff like that. But this book is awesome because it links all the cultures together. But then there's speculation as to where the origins of it all came from. Like, did it blossom out of Egypt? You know, as far as the pyramid building and the exoneration of the sun and the masonry, use of symmetry and all that stuff. And of course the as above, so below aspect, where they were literally trying to capture what they've seen in the heavens and mimic it on the ground. It was fascinating. The other day I just saw that some, young kid, I think 12 or 13, 14, some teenager, he found a hidden Mayan city in the jungle just by studying the constellations and connecting the dots, which is, a lot of people have speculated about that for years, that all we have to do is look up and then look below and we can find a lot of the old civilizations and stuff like that. There's people been trying to link all of these cultures in a Heliolithic aspect for years. There's a lot of different researchers that they bring up in that book. Some people think that the cradle of civilization may have been over here in the Americas, and they sailed out that way. And then vice versa. Some people think it came out of Egypt and then Samaria. And of course it brings up Eric von Daniken, or whatever the guy's name is, that thinks it all came from outer space, the ancient alien theories. It's a really interesting book. It kind of covers just about everything up until Columbus hits the shores. And it gives us all the evidence, of course, of all the different cultures that were here long before Europeans landed. And what I think is fascinating is that they actually have some beautiful illustrations and stuff in here. But some of the Spaniards that came over, the conquistadors and stuff, they said when they looked upon the cities in the Americas here, the marketplaces and the squares were more impressive than anything that they'd ever seen in Europe. Bigger, more vast, and more elaborate, and more intricate, and more variety of goods. It was just awe-inspiring. You know what I'm saying? They had a extremely vast network of trade, and the architecture, they described it as being far superior and more beautiful than anything that they've seen throughout Europe. Which, it makes sense, because I got this book here, Revelations of the Medieval World, and you'll see that, so much of the architecture, explosion of architecture that happened throughout the medieval world in Europe, they were just discovering how to build this stuff and most of it was Romanesque. You know, they were learning from the age before them, when the Roman Empire was around, and they were rediscovering all this, the mathematics and the tools and the architecture, and you know, how to tell time, and astronomy and mathematics, arithmetics, geometry, all, you know, the trivium and quadrivium, that stuff that I talk about. But when they get over here, you know, they sail across into the Americas, and they see these huge, you know, vast cities with massive pyramid structures, or ziggurats, or whatever you want to call them, and enormous market squares, and they weren't sure what to make of it. It's crazy that, you know, a small group of conquistadors were cunning enough to conquer a gigantic civilization and disrupt it, you know. I mean, a lot of it was biological. But, gosh, I remember reading stories of the conquistadors, and some of the stories of the people that left behind writings and stuff. They thought some of the Spaniards were invincible. They thought they were gods because they were mounted on these horses, and those horses were completely sheathed in metal, you know, and they'd run up, and their spears and their axes would bouncing off of them, and they thought they were pretty much impervious. So, you know, they were just a small group of guys on horseback, shielded horseback, shining in the sun with their armor and everything, would scare off thousands of guys. It wasn't until some Aztec warrior, Mayan warrior, some, you know, South American guy just went up there and lopped a horse's head off. And I guess that was a turning point in this big battle. I thought that was pretty interesting. They realized, oh my God, this thing can die, and it bleeds. Maybe we can do something about this. But so these guys have been around building for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and then they even speculate that a lot of the oldest and largest of the pyramids in the Americas were around much longer, even perhaps around the time of the Egyptian pyramids. So what a culture shock that is, to be a heightened civilization and come over to a place and find this new world, and that people were just as civilized, if not more, but on a different level. I find it interesting that, considering in the medieval times, when the Enlightenment age came around and they started being educated again, most of that knowledge came out of ancient Greek and Rome, but they got that from ancient Egypt, which many believe is the foundation of the cultures here. They believe that the Phoenicians and the Canaanites and the ancient Hebrews even. And what's up, ladies? Nobody's in danger. What's going on? But they believe that they came here first. And when you look at the oceans and you consider them, you know, a highway for the world, as opposed to, you know, a barrier. Take a look at the current system. I remember watching the documentary Kontiki, and those guys getting across the Atlantic on that little, Atlantic or Pacific? I think it was Atlantic, on that little wooden hutted boat. Pretty impressive. Then they talk about like the some guys also put together a reed boat. It was called the Ra Expedition, where they built an old-style Egyptian reed boat, and they tried to sail across the Atlantic. But I've read stories too of, like, King Solomon's mines were actually over here. They were over here mining turquoise, or not turquoise, mining bronze and stuff like that, copper. And it makes sense. I think the things that disconnected one culture from the other culture is biological things. I mean, if you look at, like, well, the Vikings were over here exploring and such, and according to this book, the Dutch and people from Wales and all kinds of people from Europe were coming over here, and then also the Chinese and some Asian cultures and Pacific Islanders, and there's even evidence of African, not sailors, but they were probably on deck and they spread their genes around and stuff. But I think when you look at things like when we had the Great Plague throughout Europe, when was that? Like, it was like in the 1400s. Prior to that, there was a pretty robust civilization going, and then the banking industry collapsed in like the 1300s or whatever, and then within late 1300s, early 1300s. That's that whole Templar story and stuff that I've talked about. And then this Great Plague happens after the infrastructure collapses, and then it's years later before people start trying to sail over here again. But they had probably heard stories of previous times. But so there's one story, and I found interesting, is they found a stone that was inscribed with this ancient, like, Canaanite writing, and it describes they were sailing around Africa, and then one of the ships got blown off course, and they wound up landing somewhere like off the coast of Brazil. And then their crew basically got off the ship, and some of them survived and just went into the jungle and potentially thrived there, or died there, or influenced the people that were there. I think it's fascinating. Our history is awesome. It's so muddy. It's hard to, like, really get into it all, but it's fun to look into it. Anyways, I'm just rambling, sitting out here, enjoying the weather, and just trying to